Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got an unusually important show today, right?
A very Ryan-centric show. Budget. Getting into the budget.
Excellent.
Our Rising panel will discuss President Biden's proposed budget for 2023, specifically how much money is set aside for defense and police.
All of it.
All of it. Yeah, a lot of it. Plus, Igor Kotkin is with us to discuss the latest on Ukraine. Kim Iverson, of course, will join us later as well. But first, we want to give you an overview of Biden's budget before we get into the specifics with the panel. Yesterday, Biden unveiled his $5.8 trillion spending plan to fund the government in 2023. The budget does not request money for Build Back Better and instead includes a deficit-neutral reserve fund for a future agreement between the administration and Congress. However, the budget omits measures to offset the costs of any future Build Back Better legislation. As far as the Pentagon's budget goes, Biden proposed an $813 billion Pentagon budget, marking a $31 billion increase from last year's budget. No surprises there. For context, Trump's highest Pentagon budget was $738 billion in 2020, not sure what that number is. 2020, marking a $75 billion increase by the Biden administration. Here's Biden yesterday on the proposal.
Compared to 2020, we're reducing the size of the deficit relative to our economy by almost 2/3, reducing inflationary pressures, and making real headway cleaning up the fiscal mess I inherited. After my predecessor's fiscal mismanagement, we were reducing the Trump deficits and returning our fiscal house to order.
All right, Ryan, go off, King. This is your thing. Tell us.
I'm just so proud of our military. After the withdrawal from Afghanistan, people talked about how that was costing us $300 million a day. And as a result, one less war to wage, that there was going to be a cut to the military budget. The military said no.
No.
In fact, we need a lot more money.
Of course.
More. And
makes sense.
And immediately after they withdrew from Afghanistan, if you remember, they went right back to Congress, said, we need a supplemental for extra. And instead of saying, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, go away, Congress was like, oh, here's another $20-30 billion, get you through the weekend. Now we've got a war in Ukraine.
Right.
We have.
Though we're not technically at war with Russia, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
We're pumping it full of weapons.
Sure.
That's expensive. Which is also funny that you spend $800+ billion and you don't get anything with that. Like every war is extra on top of that. And there's saber rattling in China, and so you've got to deny them access to these different waters. And so it is truly amazing the way in which the military budget just continues to go up, 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 and up. People talked about there being a peace dividend after the Cold War ended. I don't know if you remember those heady days. Like, we were spending all this money to defeat the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is defeated. Now we can spend that money somewhere else. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, we don't have to do that because one of the reasons we were doing social spending at all was to kind of counteract the Soviet system. Right. Now there's no system to have to counteract.
Yeah, no matter what happens, the interests within the government always ask for more money. Budgets rarely get slashed or cut. This is very frustrating to those of us of a small enough to drown it in the bathtub philosophy of how big the government should be and how much money it should spend. So not really surprising. But Biden was more committed. He was the one who did the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So he could, if he wanted to, make an intellectual argument that we are going to prioritize spending elsewhere in the wake of this once-in-a-century horrific pandemic that has, crippled our society. We can spend money on peace and prosperity rather than on the military. But no, he didn't do that.
Right. The budget includes, I think Aida Chavez posted this detail. The budget includes, I think, $3 billion for clean energy and $800+ billion for what? For what? Like what exactly are we going to war against? I mean,
millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute.
That's right. There you go.
It's the old.
Yeah, there you go. And now, at least there's the billionaire's tax. It's not obviously going to become law, but it has apparently really gotten under the skin of a handful of the 700 billionaires that it would hit. And so, if all of our governing now is just kind of emotional and just owning our enemies, at least putting the billionaire tax in the budget caused a tiny bit of discomfort for some very, very rich people for a couple of minutes during the day. Yeah. And we can count that as a big win.
Well, not we, but you, I see.
You probably enjoy their tears a little bit.
There's some bad things about them, sure.
There you go.
Sure.
All right, so Biden's budget plans don't include more money for COVID, however. The administration's coronavirus relief fund has covered as many as 31.2 million uninsured Americans for reimbursement, testing, and treatment. The agency has also said that it will run out of funds for vaccine claims in 2 weeks. So uninsured patients will now be charged up to $195 for a COVID test, according to The Hill. One of the country's largest testing providers, Quest Diagnostics, told ABC that patients will be billed $125 per PCR test if they are not on Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance. Meanwhile, drugstore chains like CVS and Walgreens are currently in limbo. So even if you're on private insurance, you should still prepare to pay for tests, treatments, and vaccines once the federal money runs dry. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, private insurers will establish new contracts and prices to purchase supplies, which could lead to higher costs and premiums for employers and individuals, adding that insurers may have a hard time competing with other countries for vaccines. And that's interesting because, right, the market is actually a global one between countries who are putting in orders for tens of millions. And I guess we have some pretty big insurance companies, but how many vaccines are left to dole out at this point? And I guess it upends whatever booster program. But the government should actually take advantage of this and be like, look, 2 weeks. You got 2 weeks to get a vaccine for free. After that, it's going to cost you $200.
Right.
Like there's an actual clock. Like you want a free shot, get it now. If you don't get it by now, it's $195.
If you haven't gotten it by, but my hesitation here, if you haven't gotten it by now, what are you doing? Like, or you're just someone who's not going to get it. But who's the person who's like, oh, yeah, I'd have to pay for it next week if I get it then. So I guess I'll go there.
This is America. Money talks. So they're like, oh, it's $195. That must be good.
Savings.
Yeah. Like, I forget who on the right said it, but she was like, it can't be good if it's free. And that there is like an ethos about that in the United States. So hey, get what you pay for. It's going to be $200. Must be good.
I have to say I don't care so much if we're not going to subsidize the tests anymore. But we should just totally deregulate the test. Let everyone come up, if they want to come up with tests. We should have done that from the beginning, and we would drop the price of them. I don't know that we need to do the sending tests to. How stupid does that plan even sound? The old, remember, we're going to ship you three free tests per however many it was.
Everybody's got one now, right? Well, at least they're there. They don't work necessarily.
They're not going to work, but yeah.
Or the next wave, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, we'll tell you what's on our radars up next.